Today, let's dive into the Bible to uncover the spiritual significance of I am that I am, the origin of eternity. In the ancient desert, where the winds whispered mysteries of time and the mountains stood as silent witnesses to divine encounters, a shepherd named Moses stood on sacred ground. He had fled from Egypt decades earlier, leaving behind a life of privilege after committing an act of justice that turned him into an outlaw. Now, as a humble shepherd tending sheep in the wilderness of Midian, he had resigned himself to a quiet existence. But his life was about to change forever. And if you love content like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and watch until the end. The burning bush. The desert was quiet that day, with only the sound of sheep bleating and the soft crunch of Moses' sandals on the rocky ground. As he led his flock near Mount Horeb, known as the Mountain of God, the routine of his shepherd's life seemed unshakable. But that day, everything would change. Out of the corner of his eye, Moses noticed something unusual. A bush, nestled among the rugged terrain, was engulfed in flames. Yet as he watched, the fire didn't spread, and the bush itself was unharmed. It wasn't withering or turning to ash. It burned brightly, defying nature. "What is this?" Moses muttered to himself, his brow furrowed. "Why does the bush burn, but not burn up?" Curiosity tugged at him, and he stepped closer. Each step felt heavier, as if the air itself grew thick with unseen power. Suddenly, a voice came from the flames, strong and clear. "Moses!" Startled, Moses froze, his heart pounded in his chest. "Here I am," he managed to reply, his voice shaky. The voice spoke again, filled with authority. "Do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." Moses hesitated, then quickly obeyed. He slipped off his sandals, feeling the cool earth beneath his feet. His breath quickened as the voice continued, introducing itself with words that struck Moses to his core. "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." At these words, Moses' knees grew weak. He fell to the ground, covering his face with his hands. He couldn't bear to look at the bush or the flames, knowing he was in the presence of the Almighty. The voice spoke again, its tone shifting to one of deep compassion. "I have seen the suffering of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries and know their pain. I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them to a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey." Moses listened in stunned silence. The God of his ancestors, the God he had heard about since childhood, was speaking to him. And what was more, he was declaring his plan to free the Israelites from their slavery. But then, the voice delivered a command that made Moses' heart race. "So now, go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." Moses' head shot up, and he stared at the bush in disbelief. "Me? Go to Pharaoh? Who am I that I should bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" The voice responded, steady and reassuring, "I will be with you. And this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain." Even with this promise, doubt swirled in Moses' mind. "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' What shall I tell them?" From the flames came words so profound they echoed through the ages. "I am who I am. Tell the Israelites, I am has sent me to you." The simplicity and power of this name left Moses speechless. God, eternal and unchanging, was revealing himself. He was not just a distant deity, but the one who exists beyond time, who is present in every moment, and who now called Moses to be his messenger. Moses wrestled with his fears and feelings of inadequacy, but God's voice remained firm, offering signs and assurances. With a staff in his hand and a reluctant heart, Moses would eventually accept the mission. He left that sacred encounter knowing that the God of the burning bush, the great I Am, was with him. And with God's presence, the impossible would become possible. Moses trembled at the profound words. I Am, the name spoke of eternity, of unchanging existence, of a God who is beyond time and human understanding. The name was a promise, a declaration, and a reassurance all at once. God continued, his voice steady and commanding, say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation. Moses felt both humbled and overwhelmed. The task seemed impossible, but the one who called him was greater than his fears. God wasn't asking him to act alone. He was promising his presence, his power, and his plan. Still, Moses hesitated. What if they don't believe me or listen to me? He asked. God responded by showing Moses signs of his power. A staff turning into a serpent and back again. A hand made leprous and then healed. These signs, God said, would prove his authority and strengthen Moses' resolve. Even then, Moses felt inadequate. But I'm not a good speaker. I'm slow of speech and tongue, he admitted. God's reply was unwavering. Who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. I will help you speak and will teach you what to say. Reluctantly, Moses accepted the mission. With his brother Aaron as his spokesman and God as his guide, he would return to Egypt, not as the fugitive he once was, but as a messenger of the Almighty. Moses left that sacred encounter with a staff in his hand and a divine mission in his heart. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, but he carried with him the unshakable promise of God's presence. The air around Moses seemed to hum with divine energy as God's voice resonated once more, unshaken and eternal. I am that I am. Each word was like a thunderclap, yet it carried an unmistakable calm. The phrase seemed to fill the desert with an unseen light, its meaning vast and immeasurable. God continued, this is what you are to say to the Israelites. I Am has sent me to you. Moses stood motionless, his heart pounding in awe. The simplicity of the words belied their profound depth. This was not just a name, it was a revelation of the nature of the divine, an invitation to glimpse the infinite. Unlike any name Moses had ever heard, I Am declared God's eternal and self-existent nature. He was not like the gods of Egypt, confined to idols or temples. No, this was the God who transcended all boundaries, who existed before the mountains were formed, who would remain unchanging long after the stars faded from the heavens. This name, I Am, was a statement of being. It spoke of a God who needed nothing outside of himself to exist. A God who was not created but was the creator of all. It was a name that defied the limitations of time and space, for he was the same yesterday, today, and forever. As Moses absorbed the enormity of these words, the reality of his mission grew clearer. This was the God of his ancestors, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God who had guided their journeys and fulfilled his promises. But this same God was also the unchanging, eternal one who now called Moses to be his messenger. God's declaration carried more than just a name. It carried authority. It was a declaration of his sovereignty over the entire earth and a reassurance to the Israelites that their deliverance was at hand. In that moment, Moses realized he was being entrusted with a name that would echo through generations. This was the name that would comfort the Israelites in their suffering, confront Pharaoh's pride, and ultimately lead God's people into freedom. Moses felt the weight of the mission in his hands, but also the strength of the one who sent him. I Am was not just a name, it was a promise. It was the assurance that wherever Moses went, God would go with him. And with that promise, Moses knew he could step forward into the impossible, armed with the truth of who God was, the eternal, self-existent, unchanging I am, the meaning of I am that I am. On that sacred day, as Moses stood before the burning bush, God revealed a name unlike any other, a name that carried profound truths about his nature and character. When God declared, I am that I am, he unveiled 4 eternal truths that would resonate through history. In the simple yet profound declaration, I am, God revealed himself as the Eternal One. He is not confined by time, for he has no beginning and no end. He always was, always is, and always will be. As Revelation 1:8 proclaims, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and last letters of the Greek alphabet, symbolizing God's totality. Every moment in history, every future yet to unfold, and every present moment finds its meaning in him. Unlike humans, whose lives are fleeting, God's existence stretches beyond comprehension, encompassing all of eternity. God's statement also revealed his self-sufficiency. He does not rely on anyone or anything to sustain him. While all of creation depends on him for life and breath, he is entirely independent and self-sustaining. The burning bush itself was a visual reminder of this truth, ablaze with fire but never consumed. It was a symbol of God's infinite power, burning brightly without any need for fuel. This truth reassured Moses that the God who called him would never run out of strength or fail in his purpose. I am also speaks of God's unchanging nature. He is steadfast, constant, and reliable. In a world where everything changes, kingdoms rise and fall, seasons come and go, and people's hearts waver, God remains the same. As Malachi 3:6 declares, I, the Lord, do not change. His promises are sure, and his purposes endure forever. For Moses, this was a source of immense comfort. The same God who made promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would fulfill those promises with unwavering faithfulness. Finally, God's name revealed his ever-present reality. I am signifies that God exists in every moment of time. He was with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the past. He would walk with Moses and the Israelites in their present struggles, and he remains with his people today. There is no place or moment in history where God is absent. This truth gave Moses confidence that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he would not face them alone. I am that I am was more than just a name. It was an unshakable declaration of who God is. It was a reassurance to Moses and to all who would come after that God is eternal, self-sufficient, unchanging, and ever-present. This divine name spoke of a God who is not only powerful, but also personal, intimately involved in the lives of his people. It reminded Moses that when he stood before Pharaoh or led the Israelites through the wilderness, he would not do so by his own strength, but with the eternal and unchanging presence of I am. And so, with this revelation burning brightly in his heart, Moses left the mountain, knowing he carried the promise of God's presence, power, and faithfulness with him. The name of I am would forever echo in the hearts of all who sought to know and trust in the eternal God. In the beginning, when the first light broke through the vast darkness, and the heavens and earth were yet to be shaped, there was one who existed beyond it all, the eternal God. The declaration of I am carries within it the very truth of God's existence before time itself began. He was not created, nor does he follow the flow of time. He simply is, and always was before the start of creation, before the ticking of the clock, before the world as we know it even existed. Genesis 1:1 echoes the mystery of God's eternal presence. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The phrase, in the beginning, marks the starting point of all things as we know them, but it implies that God existed before the beginning. He was already there. The very act of creation was not the birth of God. It was the unfolding of his plans, his purpose, and his will. Time, space, and the world itself were birthed by him, but he was there before any of it. The creation was not an event in time that began and ended. Rather, it was a moment where the eternal God began to shape time itself. But eternity is not merely endless time. It is the realm where time itself cannot reach. It's a reality where the boundaries of past, present, and future vanish, and God exists beyond them. Eternity is the unchanging nature of God. While everything in the created world is bound by time, it has a beginning and an end. God is above it all. He has no beginning and no end. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. This eternal nature of God is foundational to his promises. Unlike humans whose words may falter or whose plans may change with time, God is always faithful. He exists outside the constraints of time and therefore can make promises that span generations, promises that are never limited by the passing of years or the changing of seasons. When God speaks, he speaks from a place of timeless truth, knowing that what he has said will come to pass, regardless of how much time may pass. Eternity is the realm of God's existence, where there is no decay, no end, and no limit. In this eternal nature, God sees all things, past, present, and future, in one eternal moment. And it is because of his eternal being that he can make promises that hold true across all generations, from the beginning of time to its very end. He is the foundation of all that is, the beginning of creation, and the fulfillment of all his promises, standing as the eternal, unchanging I Am. For Moses, standing on the sacred ground with the words, "I am that I am," ringing in his ears, it was more than just a name. It was a reminder of God's constant presence. Moses had once been an Egyptian prince, full of confidence, but now he was a humble shepherd, facing an uncertain future. But in that moment, when the voice of God called him to a higher purpose, Moses remembered he was not alone. The same God who had always existed, who was above time and space, was with him. And that was enough. With this divine reminder, Moses found the strength to take on the daunting task of leading the Israelites out of slavery. For us today, the power of God's name, I am that I am, is a comforting and reassuring truth. In our own lives, we often face moments of doubt and uncertainty. We wonder if we have the strength to meet the challenges ahead. But just like Moses, we are not alone. God, who exists beyond time, is always with us. His promises are unchanging. When life seems overwhelming, we can trust in the eternal God who says, "I am with you." His presence is not bound by time, and his strength is available to us when we need it most. As the story of Moses unfolded, God's eternal presence became unmistakably clear. Through every step of the journey, from the 10 plagues in Egypt to the miraculous parting of the Red Sea, God demonstrated his boundless power. He revealed himself as the great I Am, unshackled by the constraints of time and space, and faithful to his promises. The Israelites witnessed God's sovereignty firsthand as he moved mountains, sent plagues, and divided the sea to lead his people to freedom. This name, I am that I am, was not just a title. It was a declaration. A declaration that God is the one true sovereign, the all-powerful creator, and the deeply personal God who intimately cares for his creation. Through this name, God assures us that he is present in every circumstance and has control over all things, both seen and unseen. His power, wisdom, and faithfulness transcend time, reaching back to the beginning and forward to the end. He remains unchanging, even as the world around us shifts and fades. For those who seek him, this eternal nature is a profound comfort. It is a reminder that God is not distant or detached. He is near, offering his eternal presence in times of trial, joy, and everything in between. His promises are sure. For he is the I Am who transcends all time and holds the future in his hands. In the end, God's name, I Am That I Am, from his tent, is not just a statement of his eternal existence. It is an invitation to know the one who is timeless, who reigns over all things, and whose presence is available to all who seek him. His eternal presence is not just a concept. It is an invitation to step into a relationship with the creator of the universe, the one who holds eternity in his hands.